Hello everyone, I'm Brad Bough along with Lee Hutchinson, welcoming you to another episode of the Indiana History Project. In 1933, then Governor Paul Voris McNutt instituted what we know now as the Indiana State Police from what was originally the Indiana Highway Police. Today with us is our very special guest, Sergeant Curt Durnil of the Indiana State Police. And we're going to discuss the history of the Indiana State Police here with you. And we're going to start out with discussing about how the Indiana State Police was instituted to combat the gang activity here in Indiana. As a matter of fact, the first 3 Indiana State Police troopers to be killed in the line of duty were killed by these very gangs that they were instituted to combat. Welcome, Curt Durnil, Sergeant of the Indiana State Police, to the Indiana History Project.
Thanks for having me, Brad. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. It's a very storied history with the Indiana State Police, and we'll start out right at 1933 with the formation of the State Police. Would you care to comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, you know, way back then there was a lot of gang activity going on, and a lot of banks were being robbed. A lot of people were being hurt by that activity. Of course, the Great Depression was in full swing by that time, Brad, and what we had established at the time as far as a police department of the state was the motor patrol at that time. So they were basically a highway patrol, but they were very limited at that time. If something didn't involve some type of traffic offense, they could not take enforcement action on that. So they could literally know that a car full of bank robbers who had just robbed a bank were right in front of them, but unless they did something to break the Indiana traffic code at that time, which was in its infancy as well, they couldn't stop that vehicle to stop those bank robbers. So that was a problem, and Governor McNutt and the Indiana legislature, knew that was a problem and it needed to be addressed, and they did it in 1933 and established the Indiana State Police.
In fact of the matter, Paul McNutt was from Bloomington, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I graduated from IU in '93, so you see the name McNutt out on campus a lot, and I believe there's at least one building named after him.
He was also a national commander for the American Legion, so a very, very involved governor.
Absolutely, statesman and patriot.
Yes, World War I veteran even. But the Indiana State Police, they were combating the 3 gangs that I read about, were the Dillinger Gang, of course, the Easton Gang, and the Brady Gang. And the first 3 state troopers killed, one each by each of those gangs.
That's correct. That's correct. And like you were saying, the very gangs that we were formed to combat against, we took our licks as well in the first 3 troopers. So, it was one of those things where we felt like, or the legislature felt like that had to be stopped. That was growing rampant during those days, where folks didn't feel like they could even put their money in banks anymore, let alone go to a bank without feeling like it had the possibility of getting robbed. So we've seen all the movies, we've seen all the things that try to glorify the gangster activity and all that kind of stuff, but that stuff was real back then, and people were getting hurt, and obviously officers were getting killed.
And it didn't stop just there. Here in recent history, the Indiana State Police were deployed to Gary, Indiana by then Governor Bough.
That's correct.
To combat the murder rate, which involved gang activity again.
That's correct. That was in 1995. I was a brand new trooper at that time. Didn't have any gray hairs, I remember, but I do now. But in 1995, they did send teams. We were divided into areas at that time, a lot like we are now. And basically, if you look at the map of Indiana, the northwest area was Area 1, northeast was Area 2, southwest was Area 3, southeast was Area 4, and then around Indianapolis and those surrounding counties was Area 5. So each area took a tour of Gary for 8 days. And they would send a team of 30 or more troopers at any one time. They would stay for 8 days, and on that 8th day, a new area would come up of troopers and relieve those troopers, and they went home after that. And that went on for about 3 months, Brad.
Very much an in-depth operation.
Mm-hmm. No question.
When you're combating those gangs, mainly you stopped it by either killing them or putting them in prison.
You know, a lot of it too, Lee, is officer presence. You know, just being there and patrolling those areas, and you know, a lot of those housing additions up there where a lot of the gang activity was going on and the drugs we were seeing at that time. We were going door to door and knocking on doors and asking people, you know, hey, what's going on in this area right now? What can you tell us about the gang activity? What can you tell us about, you know, the folks in this area? Who would you like us to concentrate on? And we were getting a lot of good feedback from them there. And I know that some of that's come up now with Governor Pence, and he's been asked by the mayor of Gary now to send us back.
I think that's very definite because the headlines, everything you see, Indianapolis included.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have to go to Gary. He can go out to Indianapolis.
Exactly
And,
right.
It's critical.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You know, you don't have to look very far to find criminal activity, no matter where you are, really.
Local police can only do so much, and we know that. They're limited in their scope and their budget as well. However, with the state police, you folks can deploy just about anywhere in the state.
And we do have a lot of resources. You know, Brad, we have resources throughout the state. Sometimes it takes us a little longer to get there. Obviously, you know, the local guys are there, and that's going to be your first line of defense, and they do a fantastic job. And we couldn't do our job without them being there already. So it is one of those things where we feel like we can go in and make a difference, but we can't do it without the local folks' help.
You have a presence that's well respected at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for just about every event they have there.
Yeah, that goes back a long way. Of course, that's you know, back as far as I can remember seeing those pictures throughout the years of troopers in victory lane, you know, especially through the 30s and the 40s and on up. But we've had that traffic detail for forever, and I've worked many Indy 500s myself, and of course starting in the 90s they started in with the Brickyard detail that came in. I believe that was 1994. I think it was the first race there. I was still in the academy at the time, but I worked the very next one. So and of course now the MotoGP is there, and countless other events that we take part in,
plus the Indiana State Fair.
Yeah, you talk about a storied history there. We've had that detail for quite some time, and you know, I would think that anybody's memories of the Indiana State Fair would probably include the Indiana State Police being there. So we've been there for quite some time, and we're kind of like a mainstay. I've worked several fairs myself, and that's been everything from working on the Midway with all the rides and all that stuff to some pretty good details over by the stage area. So getting to see some of the entertainment that's come in over the years, and they've had some good entertainment over the years.
Yes, they have. Ringo Starr from the Beatles,
I'd say,
went to a state trooper's house and had breakfast.
I'd say that's probably the best story that's come out of the state fair. The Beatles came in 1964 to the Indiana State Fair. My mother was at that concert,
right?
And she still has the ticket. I've got it somewhere. She gave it to me. But yeah, the story goes that our department was assigned to the Beatles, and they had their security, and one of our troopers actually took Ringo Starr home and had him spend the night that night, fed him breakfast the next morning. He had a teenage daughter at the time, so you can just imagine how
that went over well.
So you know how crazy they were about the Fab Four, but that was a special time and well documented. I think you can probably Google that story and look that up and find a bunch of good stories on that.
And also, I did a Indiana History Project show on tornadoes. In 1965, the Palm Sunday tornadoes, lo and behold, right there in all the carnage, there's an Indiana State Trooper. So
Yeah.
you guys have did a lot for the state when natural disasters strike as well.
Yeah, and you know, we've had our share of tornadoes over the year. I mean, they don't call this Tornado Alley, but we've had our share through Indiana, and there's several different dates. I know in I think it was 74, a tornado went through the Kennard, Carthage area that took out an entire school. Now, all those kids were saved because the tornado drills were in place and all those kids were in the basement and they survived. So that was fantastic. But my father, Jimmy Durnil, who was on the department at the time, he came on in 1972. He tells the story that day that him and the Knightstown town marshal, Arnold Butler, was with him, and they received word that that was coming. Knightstown's a little town close to Carthage and Kennard. In fact, they all fed into the same school system, and they got word that that tornado was coming through, and their first idea was to let people know and to seek shelter. And so as they are going down Main Street, which is US 40 in Knightstown, my dad and the town marshal were on the loudspeaker telling people, hey, there is a tornado coming, seek shelter, do what you need to do. He said there may have been a couple people on the road at that time. When they came back through and decided to do it again, he said there was 100 people on the street going, what's going on? Oh. What's going on? So it had an adverse effect. They were trying to get people to get inside, but they actually brought them outside. But no casualties in that tornado, which turned out to be a very good thing.
And as I recall, Knightstown is pretty much a multi-jurisdictional area with Henry and Rush counties coming together right there.
It's very close. Yeah, Knightstown actually lies in Henry County, but just a baseball throw away from Rush County.
Like where the children's home is in Rush
That's
County.
Correct. That's correct. And that's just a baseball throw from downtown Knightstown. So yes, Dad patrolled that area vigorously through those years. I think State Road 3 connects those two.
Yes. Now, the Indiana State Police was formed to combat gangs, but throughout the history, you have done other things as well. We've talked about the gangs in the 1930s. We move up to the 1940s, and the Indiana State Police was instrumental in helping secure war material during the war effort because the troops were fighting the war, and you fellows were on the home front. So
yeah.
You want to talk about
that's
that
correct.
some?
A lot of times, and we still do a lot of superloads to this day, but during that effort, weaponry was being moved around. There was also securities and monies being moved around, all kinds of different things that and I think it was the Department of Defense at that time. I don't think it was still the War Department, but they needed to move and transport things from place to place in a very secure manner. So they used our resources, and there's a lot of good photos out there of us transporting these semi trucks and these weapons from place to place, knowing that at any time somebody could identify war material or weapons or whatever it is and try to hijack something like that without the security of a department like ourselves to protect them. So yeah, I'd say it was a very big role that we played in that effort.
And you fellows didn't have vests or anything back then.
I don't think they had vests back then.
I know they didn't.
I really don't.
And the only headgear you had was pretty much similar to the exact hat we're seeing here today.
And when I was in the academy, they made us wear our vest, and I think that was an effort to get us used to wearing the vest. I'm wearing it right now, and I don't even realize it's on until you mentioned that. I didn't even realize it was on. So it's a very good resource for us, to have these vests on, and it's saved lives already. And there's been instances, I'm sitting here looking at this list of troopers that we've lost over the years. I can name one right now that if he had his vest on, it would have been a different outcome. He wouldn't be on this list right now. So it's a very important resource.
And I think I could probably name that trooper also because I was working for the Indiana Department of Corrections at that time. But I do know vests save lives. I had a 40-pound vest that I wore in Afghanistan, 3 tours worth. Mm-hmm. So they do save lives. I saw the effect of what a vest can do. The vests we had would even stop AK-47 rounds.
Wow. Yeah.
But that was the trauma plate that was in there.
Back in history, I wore a 45-pound vest on a B-17, and it would turn shrapnel from the flak.
Wow.
Sure.
Wow.
A lot of lives were saved with that.
Probably weren't very light.
No, they weren't very light. 45-pounder. Front.
Yeah, ours had a steel trauma plate right dead center.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
To help protect you, and dead center in the back also.
Yeah.
And
so well worth
wearing.
No doubt.
Yeah. And they protected you from shrapnel as well. So I can appreciate and understand why it's important that police officers wear vests.
When you get back to that, guns are available everywhere.
Oh, no question.
And so you guys are always on the alert, and they may have just as good a gun as you have.
Oh, sure.
You carry the Glock.
Yeah, we carry a Glock 45 now, and which would ruin somebody's day if we had to. And we sure don't wake up in the morning thinking that's what we're wanting to do.
No.
That'd be the last thing that we'd ever
Well, you're
want
on
to do. Is take a
defense.
life. Absolutely, and we would hope that that would never happen. But if somebody was trying to hurt you or your family or me, we all want to go home at night.
Sure.
So that's what we have to do.
Now, speaking of weapons, what are some of the different weapons that the state police have used throughout the years? I remember the old 6-inch 38s at the State Police Museum.
Yeah, now that was probably, I would say that might have been back in Bob Gillespie's day, back in the 60s. Also, when my dad came on, he carried a .357 Magnum with 6 shots.
Yeah, the Model 66.
And
yes.
He bought that gun back, and I actually have it right now to this day. And it was a neat weapon, and another one of those that would ruin your day, if you had to. But when I first came on, we were using a Beretta, a 9mm, which was the first time we had actually went to a automatic weapon instead of the roll gun,
the revolvers.
Exactly,
sure.
exactly. So we made some changes over the years. We went to a Glock, I believe, in the early 2000s, 2003 or so, and carried that for quite some time. That was a 9mm, and now we're carrying a Glock 45.
What goes around comes around. The military for years carried the 45 as their sidearm. That's probably your sidearm.
That's what I had.
Yeah, for defense if you had to bail out. And then you went to the Beretta 9mm, which is exactly what the militaries went to today. But now you fellas went back to the 45, and I'm guessing probably eventually we'll wind up with a 45 with the military again.
I'd say that's right.
Now we've talked about some sidearms. What are some long weapons that you've had? Of course, the 12-gauge shotgun comes to mind right off.
And that's what we carry. That's what we carry right now, and most are Remingtons. And it's a very smooth weapon that we use. Now, if you're not prepared when that thing goes off, it may put you back just a little bit. But from 25, 50, 75, 100 yards, we practice with those on a bi-monthly basis. And it's one of those things. It's like your fire extinguisher. You hope you never have to use it. We don't ever want to fire, but we got to be prepared if we do have to use it. So
and the shell in that is not your rabbit hunting shell.
No, it's we don't hunt rabbits with it. We use buckshot and slug.
Slug. That's what I was thinking. It'd be slugs.
And it's loaded one right after the other. So the first one comes out as buck, and the second one slug, and on out six times.
So it's an automatic.
I automatically have to pump one more.
Pump it. Okay.
So,
it's automatic if you do it.
If I do it. It's a nice weapon.
And
it really is.
We've used the M12 in Afghanistan, the 12-gauge. And that was it. It was a pump. It was not an automatic. You had to pump it after every shot. And that's what we trained the Afghan National Army soldiers how to use shotguns and pistols.
Outstanding.
They cut their eye teeth on the AK-47. And I'm sure you folks don't carry the AK-47, but you have to have some type of long rifle, don't you?
Well, our SWAT team has those, and they use those specialized weapons on their 365-day-a-year operation now. So the troopers in the field carry the shotguns. Those guys have the specialized weapons.
Okay, and what is your SWAT team called?
It's actually called the Emergency Response Team, or ERT. And they used to be an as-needed type of team. Now they are all year long. All they do is train and respond to high-profile incidences, and they also serve high-profile warrants.
So that's what they do.
Yes.
That's their full-time job.
That's right. That's their full-time job. If they are not responding to some type of scene, they are training every single day.
Now, do they have K9? Do you also have K9?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And that program has grown significantly from where we were in the 90s, probably about 4 or 5 canines statewide. Now there's, I think we're pushing anywhere from 35 to 40 at any
And they're drug-sniffing dogs.
They are. They're drug-sniffing, and they're also locator dogs. They also search and rescue as well.
Oh.
So they have different types of specialties that they're significant in, if you will. So.
And I did that in the military too, but my dogs were not friendly. These were patrol dogs from the 19.
You didn't want to put your hand down there if you didn't know.
Patrol dogs from the 1970s. Not a friendly animal.
We actually just lost one of our canines down in Sellersburg, and that's been earlier this year, June. The canine's name was Kilo, and he was helping in the search of a suspect in a home, and the suspect shot and killed the Kilo. So that was our first canine line of duty that we lost.
Now, do you have vests for your dogs yet?
We do. In fact, the Tony Stewart Foundation is a big supplier of our vests for our canines and other materials. So we've got the support of Tony, Smoke Stewart, if you will, and he takes care of us.
Go
for that.
14.
So, absolutely. So he's very pro law enforcement. We do appreciate that.
For those of you who may not know Tony Stewart, I think most everybody does, but for those of you who've never heard of Tony Stewart, he's a NASCAR champion. He's won 2 NASCAR championships, and he's from Columbus, Indiana. So it's good to hear that we've got a local man who's did good, and he's helping out the Indiana State Police in their law enforcement tasks. Now, another thing, Sergeant, about your canines is they're not just used for law enforcement. Suppose a child is lost.
Yeah. And we have used our canines before, not just if a child is lost, but also if a suspect has gotten away. You know, say we've had a pursuit and they wreck the car and they bail out of the car and they flee into the woods, wherever. Our canines are able to pick up some type of scent off of that person, and usually it tracks right to the person. So a very good resource for us. You know, we use them also for drug sniffing and location of folks, search and rescue, and the only thing that they really aren't very good at is testifying in court. So they don't they don't do a lot of testifying, but they do very well for us in the
Again,
field.
I'm always amazed. I'm amazed that people think they can get away with something, or criminals can get away. Now the dogs are after them too.
Boy,
not the bloodhound, not the old bloodhounds.
Yeah.
Chasing them through the swamp.
That's not the side of the dog you want to be
nice,
on.
He's a big police dog, always, isn't he?
Oh yeah, it's a German Shepherd.
It's always a German
always
Shepherd.
a male German Shepherd dog. Sure is. So.
And it's amazing to me that people, of course, they're probably doped up, but they don't realize what they're up against.
Right. Yeah. Again, that's not the side of the dog you want to be on.
No, you don't want to.
Now, I did handle a tracking dog for training purposes with the Indiana Department of Corrections, and it was a bloodhound.
It was a bloodhound.
A bloodhound named Jake. It was at the State Farm. And I handled that dog, and he could drag you right along. He was a big, strong animal, but he was friendly as could be.
Outstanding.
Yeah, he never offered to bite anybody. Just a big, friendly palooka that would just drag you along. Good dog. I've had some good dogs in my days, but none of them were as friendly as what you're talking about. No, just didn't have them. Now, you've got Indiana State Police labs as well. What type of activities do the labs help with? And I know they help, like the Bedford Police.
Sure.
Because smaller police agencies don't have the financial wherewithal to have the facilities that you folks do.
Right, and we have laboratories that they analyze drugs, they analyze fingerprints, they'll analyze voice, any type of voice replay, a sample of somebody's voice. So of course fingerprints and all that kind of stuff. And but you send your evidence away to this lab. This might be the only thing, saying between somebody being guilty and actually being convicted of something. So it's very important that the chain of custody is followed, evidence rules are followed, stuff is packaged right. So by the time it actually gets to the lab, those folks up there can do their analyzation in the correct way, and they do a lot of testifying in court, as you can well imagine. I mean, a good defense attorney is not going to overlook the fact that somebody else had to handle evidence. So they do a fantastic job with what they do, and it's not just saying, yeah, that was marijuana, or this tested positive for cocaine, or whatever it was. A lot of times you're talking about sex crimes that may go unpunished or not get a conviction unless we have somebody at the lab saying, yep, this is what this is.
That DNA off a cigarette butt.
No question about it. No question about it. So, I mean, it's we're not CSI on TV or anything, but we do have the facilities to get the same results. So.
Going back to the 1930s, one of the premier crime fighters in the nation, actually recognized by Hoover, was Captain Matt Leach from the Indiana State Police.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, he was our first really leader, if you will, of the Indiana State Police, and at that time, the laboratory was in the basement of the State House, where it stands today. So I mean, it's moved around from place to place. It was out at Ebbets Field for a while, near Indianapolis, and but today the labs that we have today are just top of the line. They really did, they did a great job. They spent the money in the right places, you know, to make sure that we had our resources available to us, and they do a fantastic job.
The breathalyzer was invented in Indiana.
That's correct.
IU and then the state police.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It was an Indiana State Trooper had a big part in that, and same thing with the polygraph test. We had a big part in the development of that as well. So a lot of resources over the years. VASCAR which is basically a glorified stopwatch, if you will, but it's able to tell your average speed from point A to point B. Also was developed by an Indiana State Trooper.
Okay, so if you're speeding drunk, they're going to catch you both ways.
Right. And don't lie about it
the
on the polygraph, right?
And don't lie about it on the polygraph. They got you 3 ways.
That's right. That's right.
So all these inventions have a root here in Indiana.
They really do, and it's something we're very proud of. You know, we have a proud heritage, if you will, Brad. We're very proud.
Yet Indiana was only the 12th state to form a state police organization.
Right.
We were the 12th. At that time, there was 48 states.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of surprising that Indiana was the 12th. That says a lot about the foresight of Governor McNutt. Of course, I think state police were formed out of a necessity.
Absolutely.
More than anything else.
Absolutely.
After reading the history of it.
ISP, integrity, service, and professionalism.
That's correct. That's correct.
And now, how about recruiting? Changing the subject completely.
Yeah.
Now, your recruiting class, you have a police academy.
That's right. That's right. And in fact, we have a police academy going on right now. We're getting ready to graduate a class at the moment, and from what I understand, we're looking at having another class, another recruiting process, if you will, start or later on this fall. So, in the last 6-7 years. There's either been a recruiting process or a class going on, and in one of those years we actually had 2 classes go on. So we're always, getting more. Our numbers right now statewide is 1334. We have 1,334 actual uniforms from the top down, from the superintendent all the way down to troopers in the field. So the state legislature and the governor, they want to keep that number right where it is. You don't want to lose too many. You obviously you only have so many slots, but you want to keep those slots filled, and they're doing a fantastic job of doing it.
I had my brother's grandson, Doug Hutchinson.
Sure.
Is state police.
Yes, he is. He's a corporal at our post.
And back through the ages, I've had people like Jerry Jackson.
Yes.
And Lonnie Summers and some of those boys.
Yes. And Doug's mom is our secretary at the post. Doug's grandmother was the secretary at our post. So, Loretta was for a long time, and then, of course, Teresa is now. So, another family heritage,
family heritage.
So,
when my brother passed away, they had the state police came down with an honor guard.
Fantastic.
Very fantastic.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Well deserved, I'm sure.
But now you recruit, only the top, you only want the cream of the crop.
Absolutely.
Intelligence has to be there, and education has to be there.
Yeah, and it does. And I tell people because part of my duties as a public information officer is recruiting. So I tell kids, when I talk to them about every decision that they make, no matter what it is, and I'm not just talking about the ones that are huge life-changing decisions. I'm talking about every decision. I tell them, if you wake up tomorrow morning before you go to school and you don't brush your teeth, that decision is gonna make you have bad breath throughout the day. So you see how every decision. So when you get to a point where you're out with friends and somebody shoves a marijuana cigarette in your direction, you're going to have to make a decision that's going to affect something in the rest of your life. So, if you do that, if you get caught, if you get arrested, things like being a police officer or something else that you may want to do in the future might be out the window just because of one decision that you make one night out of all of them. So,
And even if you don't get caught, when you apply to be a state trooper, here we go back to the polygraph.
that's
again.
right. That's right. And I don't know if you've ever taken a polygraph.
Yes, sir. I surely have.
And of course we have to as well for the background check. And I felt like I was a really good guy going into that polygraph examination. But even if you haven't committed any crime and you haven't done anything wrong, you feel like it when you get done, because they strap you up and they ask you all kinds of different questions, and it's a process. It really is. But and I tell kids this, you know, if I got a kid here that's great and a kid here that's great, and I have to decide between the two, and one of them has done that type of thing before, well, it's going to be an easy decision for me. And this kid hasn't. It's going to be an easy decision for me. So don't do anything that's going to tip the scale away from you and not in your favor. So, you know, you try to get through to them.
Well, there's so many temptations today as kids are growing up, and they just need to, that just has to be reinforced constantly.
No question.
You know?
No question about it.
And I just feel so sorry. But back in my teaching days, things were completely different. And,
Sure.
You know, tardy was probably the big crime. Playing hooky was a big crime.
Right. Maybe chewing gum.
Yeah, chewing gum. But that was 25 years ago when I gave it up.
Sure.
Now, let's say that Lee and I are going to apply to be state troopers.
Okay.
Obviously, but what process could I expect and could Lee expect to go through? You know, from
Yeah.
you know, the online application, I'm
Sure.
supposing, is that
Right.
it's online now?
Everything's online.
Okay.
Sure is. Sure
Now
is.
we do our online application, and where do we go from there?
Well, applications open up when they open up the process. So right now the process is closed because there's not a recruiting process going on. There's a class going on, but not a recruiting process. So what we do is we ask kids or applicants who are interested in the Indiana State Police to go to our website and sign up for alerts. And basically what that does is it gives them the opportunity to say, hey, I'm interested in your department, so this is what I want to do. And then they have to go to the website and put in their email address. Very, very simple. Yes, I want to be notified when you guys have a recruiting process come open. So that way they don't miss the deadline. I've had several people tell me before, I didn't know you were hiring. I didn't know you were hiring. So that's what we set up now. Mm-hmm. If you've signed up for those alerts, you'll get an email saying, hey, it's time. The last process that we had, the deadline was 30 days. So they give them plenty of time to get in there and fill out the application. Once that happens, you fill out a 12-page application and all kinds of different questions. There are some deal breakers on there. One of the questions is, are you willing to reside anywhere in the state of Indiana? Well, if you put no on that, then your application is going to be thrown out because you have to be able to reside anywhere that we need you. So you might be from Bedford, but we may need you to go up to Fort Wayne because that's where the need is. So so you need to answer those questions correctly, and you need to feel that way before you apply. Once the application is filled out, the process starts, and it's a 7-month process before the academy ever gets going. And everything from the written test, which we've had several times right here at Bedford North Lawrence High School. It goes into the background investigation where we talk to people who know you, who have been your teacher, been a coach, maybe even your preacher, maybe even an ex-girlfriend that maybe you've had some problems with. We want to know, who are we hiring? And I tell people, there's nothing wrong with working fast foods or at the grocery store or anything else, but this is a job that has to have the public's trust in it. So we have to know exactly who we're getting. If you're a trooper and you're on the stand and you've arrested somebody for theft, and a good defense attorney finds out that you've been a thief before, that's going to come out in court. So we need to know that. And there's some things that we can deal with, but there's things that also tip that scale one way or the other. So we're going to find that stuff out on the background investigation. You'll go through a polygraph. You'll have to be physically tested. There are certain standards at the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy that you have to have as far as push-ups, running, sit-ups, jumping, all that kind of stuff. Those are different types of standards, and that leads into a 7-month process before the academy ever starts and you get an invitation to come.
So not only do you have to be morally fit, you must be physically fit as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you know it never. It's one of those things. Every academy seems to start out with some folks who show up not ready to go, because the first day that you're there, we're going to do some running. We're going to do some push-ups, we're going to do some sit-ups and all that kind of stuff. So, as far as weeding people out, that's the easy part right there.
It's not much different than military basic training. It's what it sounds like.
You always take more than you are going to end up with.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we
Just
do
because
that.
you made the academy doesn't mean a thing.
That's right. That's right. And if we're looking for a class of 65, we make them ahead and take 75 or 80, just knowing that attrition rate,
is gonna
that's right. We're going to get right back to where we need to be. So, it's a process, and I tell folks that. And again, that's why I say, hey, there's nothing wrong with working fast food or somewhere getting a job here, but this process takes a long time, and it may be a full year before you're even offered full employment, before you're even in that car, because once you graduate from the academy, you've got 3 months in the car with a field training officer. So, and that takes a while to do, and then that field training officer says this person is ready to go or this person's not ready to go, whichever way it is. So,
and if they're not ready to go, that doesn't necessarily mean termination, does it?
No, it doesn't mean termination. There's a lot of things that we can do to help a guy along, to say, what are we doing wrong? What can we do better? And we'll get that person there. With that training, that whole time there's a lot of money invested in somebody's training. There's thousands of dollars invested in training, and which is another reason we have folks sign a contract with us now, because what we don't want is somebody coming to our place and getting all that training and then saying, sayonara, we'll see you guys later. So we do have a contract now. So
How long is the contract?
I believe it's 2 or 3 years.
2 to 3 years.
I'd have to look, but I think it's at least 2 or 3 years that they have to stay with us or they have to pay that money back.
Now, once they make it under service, then whatever retirement, how many years do they serve?
They have to serve 25 to get their full
25,
benefits.
yes.
And after that, I'd have to check with HR. They've got all that information there, but 25 years is when you can retire with full benefits.
We know several local guys who retired, like
Right.
Jerry Jackson.
Right, sure. Yeah,
Joe O'Brien, going back to Joe O'Brien and Jim Sutton and all those.
Oh,
boys
mercy,
that we knew,
yes.
Jim Graves,
Oh, sure. I know that name. Absolutely.
So we've had we've been well represented with the Indiana State Police.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
We had a national shooting champion right out of Lawrence County, was a state trooper, and Tom Cox.
Yeah.
I remember Tom.
Yeah. So we have been well represented here in Lawrence County with state police. We surely have. Mm-hmm. The process starts out now. What is the age limit? How old and how young?
By the time you graduate from the academy, on graduation day, you have to be 21 years old at the minimum. So you could actually start the academy at age 20 and go all the way, turn 21 in the academy or on graduation day for that matter. Or on the other side of that, you have to be age 39 or younger by graduation day. So you could actually, if you're in the academy and you're going to turn 40 before graduation day, you're disqualified.
That ruled me out.
So there you go.
and there I go too.
At 88, you could make headlines if you took me.
There you go. I just lost both of you right there. I'm sorry.
Well, that's the way it goes.
That's the way it goes.
Choices in life, just
That's
like
right.
you were saying.
That's right. Well, I tell people it's better than the alternative, right?
That's right.
Of not being your
Oh,
age.
yeah.
Yes, and that is true. So if the person turns 40 the day before graduation, he's disqualified.
Yes, that's correct.
But if he turns 40 the day after graduation, he's good to go.
That's right. Or the day of graduation,
Or the
for
day
that
of
matter.
graduation.
Yes, absolutely. So it all goes back to the having to have 25 years in, and what our mandatory retirement age now is 65. So
Now, the services you provide, I noticed on road conditions. Mm-hmm. Does it bother you that people call and say, how's the snow, or how's it?
Well,
is that one of the services, or is that just a...
It's one of those things where if we're not busy, it's not a problem if they call and say, you know, are the roads open from here to here? If we're not busy, no problem. But usually when people are calling about road conditions, it usually means we're busy because there is bad road conditions and they want to know. So we do have some telephone numbers that I can pass on that they can call. And also there's a website, NDOT has their website, and they have road conditions statewide. And it's a really neat.
That's the answer.
It really is. It really is because a lot of those mornings, you know, we're sending troopers for slide offs and folks are involved in crashes and they're hurt, you know, and we're in the middle of all this kind of stuff and it's hectic and somebody calls and says, can you tell me how the roads are from Bedford to Bloomington? You know, well, I'd love to, but we don't have a lot of time this morning to do that. So there are other services that can definitely help them out with that. So.
I tell you.
Now, you could talk about some road safety here since we've got into this topic. What are some things that people should do when they're taking a trip?
Yeah, I think, you know, the biggest thing that we like to pass on to folks is when we're out there, especially say over holiday time driving, July 4th or Labor Day, whatever it is, you know, whenever you're out there on vacation, whatever it is, we ask folks not to be the aggressive driver. And that's what we see a lot of times. You know, we see a lot of tailgating. We see a lot of improper passing, of course, speeding. We see a lot of different things, left of center, whatever it is, with that type of thing. But we also see folks on their cell phones, you know, continuously.
Yeah,
you
that
know,
drives me nuts.
I'm
that
telling
drives me crazy.
you know, and what that does is that actually leads to that type of behavior where you know, if you are on any downtown or on the interstate, wherever it is, you're on that cell phone and you're texting or whatever it is. If you're adjusting the radio, whatever distracts you.
You're not concentrating on that highway.
Exactly. You're not 100% behind that wheel. It gets very dangerous. And that's what we're out there looking for. We're looking for the behavior that stems from this type of distraction. You know, if you go left of center, that's obviously a violation. That's an infraction. You know, you can be stopped for that. We also see people in town that are distracted by whatever, and as they're coming up to intersections, they're not braking like everybody else is. You know, there's a traffic light coming up. Why aren't you slowing down? You know, that type of thing. Or just the opposite. We'll see people who are all over their brakes for what reason? This is the flow of traffic and you're all over your brakes. Why are you doing that? It's because they're distracted and they don't have their mind on driving. So, but for big trips, we always ask people to be well rested. You always want to make sure you tell people where you're going, and not to say don't take the cell phone. The cell phone's a great resource, you know, and I tell people that. But if you ever do have to call 911 from the cell phone, remember, we don't know where you are until you tell us. Mm-hmm. So, and we've had to coax some people through on the telephone. They'll say, "Hey, I've just been involved in a crash, or this just happened." Well, where are you? It's like where are you? So we have to tell. Okay, well, where were you coming from? Yeah. Where were you coming from? Well, I was coming from Bedford. You headed to Bloomington. Okay, well then we narrow that down. We think, well, they're on State Road 37 or maybe Old 37 somewhere, and then we'll ask, you know, what was the last landmark that you saw? Did you see something on the roadway that could tell us where you are? But again, 911, great resource, cell phone, great resource, but you got to be able to tell us where you are.
Will there ever be a time when they pass a law that you can't use a cell phone?
Well, in several communities nationwide, it is. It is a law that you cannot have the phone.
It's a hazard.
Yeah, it really is. And I know some communities that if you even have it in your hand, you can be stopped and ticketed for that, which, you know, nowadays with the smartphones, there's so many different applications on there, from GPS, texting, emails, whatever it is. They're going to have it in their hand. I mean, that's just the way it is. And there's, in fact, in California, there was a case that went all the way up to the California Supreme Court that a gentleman was stopped for having it in his hand, and he was checking his GPS. Now, you know, right or wrong, that's what the law is out there, and you know how it is. Eventually, it comes to our place as well. So right now, it just involves texting. It does not involve being on the phone. So again, we just ask that folks be careful.
When I was coming in here to interview Sheriff Craig, I've told this story on the air already, but a woman smoking a cigarette and had the cell phone And I drove past. She was driving real slow in the left-hand lane there on 16th Street, and I drove past her, and I thought, what in the world? I said, here she is, just looking ahead. I'm thinking she must be steering with her knees.
Must be, yeah. And I'm sure you've seen others, read the newspaper, eating, whatever it is. Ladies putting on the makeup, there's all kinds, and it knows no stranger. I mean, it seems like a lot of people are doing it, so we need to be very, very careful. Defensive driving is always a good thing.
And you fellows have got some type of patrol going on right now, don't you? Some special patrol?
Yeah, Operation Pullover, which again, we are targeting that aggressive driver. We're targeting the intoxicated driver. We target the drivers who aren't properly restrained by a seatbelt, or child that's not properly restrained by some type of seatbelt or car seat. So yeah, we're looking for all of that, and of course that kind of leads into the Labor Day holiday where those patrols go way up.
And you're not doing it for your benefit, you're doing it for the public's benefit.
No, yeah, and that's the case, right?
That's what you have to sell.
Right.
That I'm innocent. I'm driving down the road innocently poking along, and some guy comes around.
Right.
You're helping me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, when the times happen that there's more traffic on the roadway, you're going to need to have more officers on the roadway too to monitor what's going on. If traffic flow is just average, you've got your average number of officers out there. But when traffic goes up, you're going to want more enforcement out there. Obviously, it's just a matter of numbers. So
now, it's not just the aggressive driver or the intoxicated driver that we have to watch out for. Sometimes we have to watch out for that driver that's just absolutely not paying any attention. And in some cases, those can be worse than the cell phone drivers.
Yeah, and you're right. And I've had people tell me that before, and it kind of makes me chuckle, of course, but you're right. If you're not paying attention to the roadway, if you take your eyes off the roadway for any amount of time, you're leaving it up to chance. You really are. And not to say that intoxicated driving is any less dangerous or more dangerous, but we also know that driving while exhausted, that can be a problem too. If you're a tired driver, you're going to miss some things that you might not have missed if you were not tired. So, you're exactly right. I mean, being distracted is awful.
I knew a deputy sheriff in Arkansas that was behind a car for over 5 miles with emergency lights and siren on, and the person was driving. He gets the person finally pulled over. I didn't see you.
Well, semi-truck drivers are on a rigid schedule.
Right.
They have to be here and have to be there and have to be there.
Yeah,
they are very dangerous.
Oh my!
The laws that say you have to go from here to Los Angeles and back in a certain time.
Right. And they're under heavy restrictions with their logbooks and all that kind of stuff. But they've also got their business telling them, hey, you need to get here. You need to get here from here.
And that's the guy that stops. He is an official state policeman, but he's interested on the trucks.
Right, and that's our CVED division, Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Division, and that's all they do. That's all they do is the truck enforcement, and they also do school bus inspections as well.
And that's an important project as well.
On your 4-lane, on your super, like 94 that went across northern Indiana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
From Detroit to
my.
Chicago.
Yeah.
That was one of Doug's first jobs.
Different world up there now.
Oh, that's something else.
You've also got a group of troopers that enforce laws at the international port, and people don't realize we have an international port here in Indiana, but we do at Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
It's just like a seagoing port.
We actually used to have a post up there.
Okay.
We used to have a facility up there, and that's all those troopers did as well. Now that we don't have that anymore, but we do, of course, have the Indiana Toll Road, which is state line to state line, right across the top, of course, and that's all those guys do is patrol that interstate. So, you're right. That facility's not there anymore, but we do still patrol.
And you used to have the Dunes Park post
correct.
There in the park.
That's correct. Yeah, we sure did. That's making a lot of news here as recently.
Correct.
Yes. Near tragedy up there that they escaped.
Where is the Indian Bloomington post now? They've moved it from.
Yeah, they sure did.
Is it on the Ellisville Road? Or?
The old post where the old post sits, where the old post sat, is, I believe, center field in the new softball
Okay,
complex
yeah.
there at IU. So they put the softball complex and the baseball stadium right next to each other. Now we are out on 37 near Vernal Pike on Packing House Road.
Okay.
We've been there since 2008. You can't see us from State Road 37. You have to go down Vernal Pike just a little bit, but you can see our tower. So it'll take you right to it.
You want to comment on this picture we have up here commemorating the 75th anniversary of the state police? Look at all the different vehicles. I'm kind of a motorhead.
Yeah.
I've had 2 racing shows already in here, so I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah.
You want to comment on some of your favorite vehicles that you see up there?
Well, the motorcycles at the bottom there. We started out patrolling with Indian motorcycles, and that's been way back and right from the start.
1921.
Those guys, those Indian motorcycles. If you had one today that was in good shape, it'd be worth a lot of money, I'm sure. But those guys would patrol in those things all year long, and that if it was snow on the ground or ice, it didn't matter. They were stuffing their uniforms with newspapers and whatever else to try and stay warm. But those are some good pictures there. And of course, we discontinued the use of the motorcycles somewhere in about the 50s, and then in 2004 we got those back. And my brother, who's also a trooper at the Bloomington Post, was instrumental in starting that motorcycle program back in 2004. So we drive Harleys now, or those guys drive Harleys. I'm a 4-wheel guy myself. I don't really go with the 2 wheels, but yeah, they're back, and of course we have those statewide, and which is a fantastic program. Now the car on the right above the badge, I believe that's the Mustang, and those came around in the 80s. My dad was instrumental in starting that. It was the high performance vehicle section, and they would travel all over the state to different venues and different areas where they knew that traffic was going to be a little bit higher, maybe on a holiday, maybe a college football game, maybe a graduation ceremony at Notre Dame, wherever it was. They would travel from place to place, and that's all they would do is get out there with those Mustangs and look for those speeders.
They were marked cars?
Well, they were actually unmarked. They didn't have any markings on them at all.
Right.
After the Mustangs, they went to Camaros and then back to Mustangs, and they still have Mustangs now.
So you still have unmarked cars
That's
patrolling.
correct. That's correct. We do. We have if any car in our fleet, we have something that's unmarked as well. Mm-hmm. So we're going to Chargers right now, which is what I drive. But we do have some unmarked Chargers. We have unmarked Mustangs at the time, and we have unmarked Crown Victorias as well. The car on the top was the car that I was issued. That's actually, there was only 18 or 19 of those statewide, maybe not even that many. That is the 75th anniversary commemorative car. Superintendent Weitzel at the time, it was his idea. That stripe on the side is the same color as our original car that we had in 1933, that yellow stripe. I call it a school bus stripe. Some of the guys have said it looked like a bumblebee, but yeah, I drove that car for about, about 4 or 5 years. So, and then I'm in the Charger now. But all those other cars, yeah, that goes through a lot of history there, and I'm sure Dad started off with one of them back in '72. So kind of a family business for me as well.
I noticed when you parked out here on the parking lot, mm-hmm. you parked headed out.
Yes.
You're always ready.
And they teach us that too. What they found was a lot of our crashes that were happening, and just the little property damage were backing out. And then they delved a little bit further into that and found out these guys are backing out when they're headed to a call.
Yeah.
Well, you've got a call on your mind of somebody's getting hurt, somebody needs me, I got to get to where I'm going right now. You run out to the car and you throw it in reverse, and you forget what's behind you. What's going on here or there, and so they've asked us to back into our parking lot when there's no emergency, when we're not jacked up on adrenaline or whatever.
We interviewed a World War II vet here last year, I think, and he was a recon. And he always parked. He said we always parked that car so we can get away in a hurry.
Absolutely.
So you guys are parking it so you can get out to duty in a hurry.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. So, and it's helped us. I mean, it's helped us to be safer. It's helped us to, obviously those backing crashes are just petty, but there's still property damage and still something has to be fixed. So it's just trying to help the process out a little bit. So.
Every little detail.
That's right.
You
Attention to
planned
detail.
It all,
that's right.
Every decision you make.
Yeah, that's right. Every one of them, no matter.
Sergeant, we're going to have to close the show here pretty soon, but before we do, I'd like to ask you to, if you would, please, read the names of the troopers that have been lost in the line of duty.
Certainly.
Before we close out the show, so that people realize that the security they enjoy here in Indiana isn't free. There's still a sacrifice to it.
Certainly, and I thank you for the opportunity to do that as well. Starting off, Trooper Eugene Teague, Wednesday, December 20th, 1933. Cause of death was gunfire. Trooper Paul Vincent Miniman, Thursday, May 27th, 1937. Gunfire. Trooper William Raymond Dixon, Tuesday, June 28th, 1938. Gunfire. Trooper George August Forster, Saturday, May 17th, 1941. Automobile accident. Trooper Richard F. England, Wednesday, April 22nd, 1942. Automobile accident. Trooper Herbert Wade Smith, December 5th, 1946, gunfire. Trooper Robert E. Clevenger, Tuesday, September 8th, 1953, vehicle pursuit. Sergeant Hubert E. Roush, Wednesday, January 26, 1955, automobile accident. Trooper Earl L. Brown, Wednesday, August 31st, 1955, gunfire. Sergeant John R. Miller, Monday, September 5th, 1955, aircraft accident. Trooper Donald Raymond Turner, Saturday, January 28th, 1956, struck by vehicle. First Sergeant Marvin E. Waltz, Monday, March 18th, 1957, gunfire. Trooper William Ray Kellums, September 30th, 1957, gunfire. Trooper John Henry Powell, February 27th, 1959, struck by vehicle. Trooper Robert Jack Garrison, December 14th, 1959, automobile accident. Trooper Robert C. Gillespie, Friday, June 8th, 1962, automobile accident. Trooper William F. Keyser, Tuesday, March 9th, 1965, gunfire. Trooper Oscar Eugene Mills, Tuesday, April 12th, 1966, vehicle pursuit. Trooper William R. Rayner, Sunday, December 18th, 1966, gunfire. Trooper Richard Brown, September 27th, 1967, struck by vehicle. Trooper Robert Otto Lietzen, March 30th, 1969, gunfire. Sergeant George W. Campbell, June 18th, 1969, heart attack. Trooper Joseph Strew, February 20th, 1971, gunfire. Sergeant Glenn R. Hosier, April 26, 1971, gunfire. Trooper William Joseph Trees, June 26, 1972, vehicle pursuit. Trooper Lawrence Meyer, February 2nd, 1974, heart attack. Trooper Lewis Edward Phillips, April 16, 1975, automobile accident. Trooper Roy Jones, July 3rd, 1979, automobile accident. Trooper Robert Lather II, July 6, 1982, vehicular assault. Trooper Stephen L. Bailey, December 10th, 1983, gunfire. Sergeant John Edward Hatfield, Monday, April 13th, 1987, gunfire. Master Trooper Michael Green, February 5th, 1993, gunfire. Trooper Todd A. Berman, July 29th, 1993, gunfire. Trooper Andrew Winsenreed, April 25th, 1997, struck by vehicle. Senior Trooper James Bartram, March 31st, 1998, automobile accident. Master Trooper David Anthony Duder, July 16th, 1998, struck by vehicle. Trooper Robert Terrell Gaston, March 4th, 1999, vehicular assault. Trooper Corey Elson, April 3rd, 1999, gunfire. Trooper Jason Beal, January 15th, 2000, struck by vehicle. Trooper Scott Allen Patrick, December 22nd, 2003, gunfire. Lieutenant Gary Dudley, August 22nd, 2006, vehicular accident. Trooper David Edward Rich, July 5th, 2007, gunfire. And Trooper Roy Barrett, automobile accident, January 27th, 2008.
Thank you, Sergeant. And on that note, we will close the program out. And I want to thank you on behalf of the Indiana History Project for coming down and being on the show with us here today. Lee, I want to thank you for your service to the country before we close out.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Be sure to thank all your troopers for everything they do to keep the citizens in Indiana safe. And with the names you've read off, we see that security is important, but there's a price to be paid for the safety we enjoy as Hoosiers. Remind everyone to please like us on Facebook, and reminding you to please, if you enjoy your freedom, thank a veteran. On behalf of the Indiana History Project, I'm Brad Bough, along with Lee Hutchinson, thanking you for watching. Goodbye, everybody.